Good afternoon. I'd like to go ahead and call to order this 85th meeting of the Jacksonville Tourism Development Authority. Welcome everyone in attendance and those viewing us on G10. We've got an agenda provided. I'd like to have a motion for the adoption. All right, all in favor? Aye. Okay. We've also got one set of minutes from a regular meeting on February 21st, 2022. I'd like everybody review those.
Second.
Second. All right. Have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Great. Okay. I'd like to call on John Carter to give us a little update on the recent legislation, ethics legislation.
Chairman, I wanted to bring to the board and to the public's attention the minutes you just approved of February 24th, 2022 of your meeting. At that time, I went over in detail the new session law as far as ethic laws and conflicts between public officials and nonprofits. And at the end of that meeting, Mr. Hagan, Director Hagan, indicated that he would remain on the board of Sturgeon City and of the Sports Commission. Subsequent to that meeting, he has decided to resign and has resigned from both of those boards and has given to me letters which I have filed with the clerk. So for the public and everyone to know, he has no conflict moving forward, speaking plainly, as he usually does anyway, as far as his thoughts on those two agenda items as well as others. The only thing that staff is aware of is we do still have the situation, Mr. Wright, and we will respect that and move that as far as a separate agenda item where he can recuse himself as far as his relationship with jazz in the city. But other than that, as far as I know, everyone's free to speak on anything else. But I just want to get that out there so that everyone would know that had been a change from the February meeting. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you, John, and thank you, Ken, for your dedication to the authority. That's nice. All right, so we're going to go ahead with our first item on the agenda is the creation of our standing committees. Looks like we're going to transition from ad hoc to standing. Anthony, you've got some...
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for spending some time with us today on the business of the Tourism Development Authority. So the request that's in front of you today is a follow-up from our meeting in February where we talked about the value of our ad hoc committees and all the great work that we've been doing as part of that process. The discussion basically led to the conclusion that we would like to take them from an ad hoc status, which generally speaking means more of a temporary or project-specific type of role, and create them as standing committees, basically ingraining them in our business model for the future moving on. So speaking with John, we looked at the bylaws, and really this doesn't take anything more than a motion and a vote from the directors, and we can simply convert those from ad hoc to standing committees.
Very good. I think it's been a great exercise for us to get a little deeper into the workings of the organization, and missed that last meeting, but I can appreciate what was transpired from the meeting, the minutes. So I guess we're just left to entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved.
A second. Second. All right. Any more discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Signify by saying aye. Any opposition to this motion? Very good. All right. And now next we're going to discuss our FY 22-23 budget public hearing. I guess, Gail, you're going to fill us in on the do's and don'ts?
Yes, this item is just for you to review the budget at the very highest level, which is what's required by the law. And as you can see, we are anticipating occupancy tax of $1.1 million, a little bit of penalties, but don't get excited, those go to the school board. The investment earnings is little and nothing, and then the $125,000 appropriate fund balance is from the promotion side, where they, you all decided last year that 15% of the fund balance would be available. So that's what we're recommending for the budget. And then on the expense side, you can see there's some administrative costs that are the insurance, the audit, those kind of things. And then there's the two-thirds, one-third split, which that's not two-thirds, one-thirds, because we add the 125 to the promotion, one-third. But just as a explanation, that's why the numbers aren't exactly one-third and two-thirds. But this is what's required by the law to be adopted. You all get into a little more detail about how we spend those large sums of money. But the purpose today is to present the budget to you and ask you to schedule a public hearing that is required by the law on May 26th at your regular meeting.
Okay. Just one question, I guess. So we're appropriating the fund balance, so we're really not anticipating that as additional revenue. We're just looking at the potential year's revenue at the 1.1 plus the 2,000 and the 2,000. Is that we're budgeting?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Very good. Any questions, comments?
I do have a question that I probably know the answer, but I forgot it. On the administration costs, is that split 50/50 between the two entities?
We remove that from the revenue and then split it one-third, two-third.
Oh, okay.
Reduce the
Comes out
revenue
the
and then
top.
split. Yeah. So it comes out two-thirds, one-third, basically.
Okay. So we're looking at the public hearing for May 26, 2022, and we just need to schedule that, I guess?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that'll be our next meeting in about a month, right? 4 weeks from today.
Entertain a motion, Mr. Chairman, to get that scheduled.
Okay. We'll have a motion to have that on the 26th, May 26th?
So moved.
Second? Second? All right, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, we've got that taken care of. Okay, Gail, we get to talk again about the audit firm, and take your time, we're kind of getting rushed here, so we got plenty of time. We're moving too
We
fast.
could talk forever about the audit. Be careful what you ask for. The city of Jacksonville went out for bids for the audit for the city and for the Tourism Development Authority because there was a significant increase in the audit. The city council voted to award the contract to Malden and Jenkins. And historically, the TDA has gone with the same audit firm. It is certainly the most economical position for the TDA because as the auditor looks at internal controls for the city, they don't have to redo that again when they go to look at the TDA. So we're recommending that you award a one-year contract to Malden and Jenkins with 4 one-year renewals.
Now, when you say there's 4 one-year renewals, will that have to come back to this board each year?
Yes, sir. It's required by the law that you appoint an auditor every year.
And it probably wouldn't be feasible to use another firm because they wouldn't want to do it for that.
That's
that
correct.
fraction of the
Yes.
job.
Yes. I would expect it would cost you $12,000 or more to get
Just
a
gonna be-
different auditor.
Which this one is going to cost $7,000, right,
Yes.
according to what I saw at the regular meeting.
Does the option to renew, Gail, belongs to the audit firm or to the city, or to both?
Both. So either one can choose not to renew.
But they did offer a commitment on their side. but-
They did,
Okay.
But each year they can opt out.
yes.
It's not like a baseball contract.
That's exactly
Right.
what this is.
I'm not sure they have a buyout clause, though.
I'd go ahead and make the motion that we go ahead and hire them, Martin and Jenkins LLP, as auditors of our TDA for 1 year, and option to renew by both sides annually for the next 4 years.
Just point of clarity, at what time of the year will this actually occur, the audit, normally?
I spoke to the woman after we had the council meeting, and we are anticipating starting in June with some preliminary work, and then sometime towards the end of August versus September with the field work.
Very good. All right, so we got a motion, a second, and All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, very good. Got that business taken
Can
care
I
of.
just come down and sit in, because I missed that, you know what I mean?
I'm sure Gail would let you take her place.
I'm kidding.
Send you a calendar invite.
All right, then we're going to move right along to our fourth item on today's agenda, the NC Pacific Arts Festival. And Anthony, you're going to give us a little information about that, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. So over the past couple of years, we've had opportunities and challenges associated with COVID-19, particularly in regards to the events that we support every year. One of the challenges that we've had in fiscal '22 is that because of COVID reasons and because of other logistics, the Riverwalk Arts Festival unfortunately had to cancel their event for this year. But at the same time, when we were doing interviews for the fiscal '23 promotion events, we came upon an opportunity and we wanted to present it to you and see how you felt about possibly reallocating the funds that are unused from the Riverwalk Arts Festival to the Pacific Arts Festival. And this was formerly known as the Polynesian Festival. So this is not a new event, but fortunately it is new to Jacksonville. Okay? So just some imagery here of what they've got going on. I would say that it's very similar in what we saw to the powwow last year. There's dancing and crafts and various types of educational opportunities to learn about the Polynesian culture. There's food, all kinds of things. One thing that was pretty unique that we didn't learn necessarily from their application, but we learned in speaking with the event promoters, was that they bring in these folks, the dancers and the judges and the drummers and the food vendors they all come from out of town. So even though a lot of the actual participants come from Onslow County, a lot of the folks that are required to put this event on come and they stay in our local hotels. So one of the great things about the Pacific Arts Festival this year is, even though historically it's been in Onslow Pines Park, and then last year it moved out to Humphreys Farm, which is out toward Swansboro, they've decided to bring it to Jacksonville this year. And the intent is to keep it in Jacksonville, mainly because we're close to all the hospitality assets. We're close to the hotels, the restaurants, the retail, and also the venue that they've selected, it is suited to meet their needs today as well as for future growth. And it's also more affordable to them than other places that they've been in the past. So we feel that this is a really good opportunity for us, especially since we weren't able to support the Riverwalk Arts Festival, to try something new, even though this isn't an event that's new to Onslow County. This is an event that's new to the Jacksonville Tourism Development Authority. We've never supported them in the past, from what I could tell. The event is going to be on June 19th or 18th and 19th. You can see the hours there. It's going to be at the American Legion building and the fairgrounds over in that area. And you can also see what type of events and entertainment they're offering there. One other thing that struck me as we were talking to the event promoter is that they feel that they have a lot of potential for growth. And we feel that they have a lot of potential for growth too, but only in partnership with them, because they, from what I could tell, appear to have grown the event to basically what they can, given the level of support and expertise that they currently have. However, if we were willing to invest in the event with the support of Susan and Teresa, we could expand the market and hopefully bring more participants in from outside our local area. So really I would call this a beta test. I think it's a strong event for us to bring to Jacksonville. It's a good one to support and see how it goes. One of the things that we talked to them about, though, is we want to be able to measure to some extent what the draw is. So Teresa's been working with Mrs. Mary about identifying specific hotels to work with and how to track those stays so that we can measure that and report it back to you to get an idea of what the return on investment is. So again, the request here is to reallocate existing funds. It's not to request any new funds, and we'll just see how it goes, if you're willing to support it.
Just out of curiosity, how did they promote it in the past, you know? I've heard of it, but I don't remember.
From what I could tell, and please jump in here, from what I could tell, it was largely word of mouth.
Oh, great.
And they have a webpage that it seems to work well, but it doesn't appear to get updated very frequently. And they've moved mostly to social media where they have a Facebook group that they
Oh, I see.
broadcast out to. But again, you know, the intent with this $5,000 is to shift the market approach from the folks who want to participate in it, right? The dancers and the craftsmen and stuff like that. Shift it to people who want to come from out of town to come and actually participate, you know, and learn during the festival.
And so where did this graphic, they provided this graphic, I guess, that we're looking at here?
This one here,
Uh-huh.
actually, I lifted it off of their Facebook page.
Oh, okay. Because
So-
I see the dates, but I didn't, you mentioned June is the, okay.
I had to, it was quite large, so I had to condense it down to
okay.
get it to fit on the slide. But yes, it is barely within the fiscal year, so that's good for us to be able to invest in it with current year money if we so choose.
Sounds like a good idea to me, and probably time to get on to it for that.
Well, and I can tell you what, my son's really interested in this guy right there. He's the fire dancers. So evidently they put, is it Saturday or Saturday and Sunday? I can't remember.
I think Saturday night.
Did I miss anything? I mean, do you want to add anything?
No.
So they have like an evening fire dancer show, which I think is going to be pretty neat.
Yep.
And of course, to take the kids to that, so.
So Anthony, would you recommend that a motion be made to reallocate $5,000 in promotion funds?
Yes, sir.
Support the 2022 North Carolina Pacific Arts Festival.
Yes, sir.
So move.
Second? Second?
Yes, I second, and then I'll
Okay.
discuss.
Okay, go ahead.
Teresa? Is $5,000 enough to get the word out this year through media and other sources that you have?
It is a minimal amount of investment, honestly, but we can certainly help them move the needle on social media. So that was what Anthony and I had talked about, was it would be a pretty easy shift of that 5,000. And it would also give us a little test of working with them. And we have a different recommendation probably for FY '23.
And the other question I have is this a flyer that they're sending out? Because they need to have June on it. Are you saying
He
June is on
he
it?
took it.
June is on it in its original form, but to make it show up on the presentation, I did modify it a little bit.
So the last
Did some creative
question I
editing,
have
yes, sir.
Is if Riverwalk Arts comes back next year, are we prepared to fund both of them?
The recommendation at this point is yes,
Okay.
but that discussion will happen in May once we talk more about the spending plan,
So there wouldn't be a situation where one would be thrown out.
unless the directors choose for that to happen. So right now, if we continue on the path that the promotions committee is on, the intent would be to fund both of them in fiscal '23.
I'm going to ask a little sensitive question here, and that is, has anybody contacted the folks at Riverwalk Arts Council
Mm-hmm.
to let them know that we are supporting this, but we're also going to support them if they come back again? We've already reached out to them.
We spent a good amount of time with Noah a couple weeks ago, talking to him about the whole situation. So,
Any other comments, discussions? All right, got the motion and a second. All we need is all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? No.
Good work.
All right, thanks. Yeah, that's great. So now we're going to move on to our committee reports. And we'll start with the tourism-related. Ken Hagan?
Okay, we met last week, was it? We met sometime.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, last week, whatever it was, yeah.
Time goes by when you're having so much fun.
That's exactly right.
We reviewed the contract, well, we didn't review the contract, but staff notified us that they had contacted. Have we hired the person yet? You want me to just say, take it from here?
It's up to you, sir.
Take it from here.
Yes, sir. Great news that we were able to hire Bright's Total Masonry, local contractor, well-known. Gail's heard great news. Our Parks Division has had work, experience with him as well, so we're super excited that we've got someone to help us turn our concept into reality. We've notified the base, work is going to begin. And so work is going to kind of start about the second week in May. He's working us in between a couple of his other jobs, so work will be a little bit slow. But you'll see work progressing over the next about 30 to 45 days. So the intent is that we'll build the sign first, and then we'll follow that up once we have the actual size of the sign with the size of the letters that go on it. And then we have started conversations with our Parks Division to identify a potential landscaping plan. But again, we're trying to be sensitive of the area and not to take away from the Memorial Gardens itself, but more complement it. So as soon as we have some more information as far when work starts progressing, we'll make sure that we send out some pictures ahead of next meeting.
Well, thank you for staff following up on that. I know it was a little bit of a headache for you guys to find somebody that was going to be able to do the work, so it's very nice that we were able to get somebody, and I've heard good things about them as well.
Yes.
So I think we're going to be very pleased. Okay, we reviewed our spending plan, and it's pretty short and sweet. We have $150,000 for the Sturgeon City debt, and Gateway signs, the design is $20,000. Nonprofits, we still have a question mark, and so our total for 23 is going to be $170,000, and you can see the unassigned balance is now going to be $541,449. So that's pretty much the spending plan for the next year. Is that correct?
That's the proposal thus far, so.
Okay. So right now, unless new projects come along in the next 12 months, that's going to be our budget for the coming year. Anything else? Okay. Again, thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Okay. Now I'll call on Chris for our Promotions Committee report.
Let's see here. Thank you. So when the Promotions Committee met, and I'm drawing a blank on the date now that I'm going to say it.
2 weeks ago?
Yes, 2 weeks ago. Obviously, we spoke about the event applications, some of which we just mentioned, the recurring promotional expenses, and the applications that we currently had in front of us, which totaled 12. So our current unassigned balance, as you can see on this presentation, is $129,787. $240,830 of that would be recurring promotional expenses. There were $111,000 with the event applications, and the nonprofit applications will be determined by the May 26th date. So this did include the 15% that Gail had mentioned earlier, which was the transfer to the fund balance. The recurring promotion expenses include Teresa and Susan and their marketing and promotion efforts, our marketing efforts with Visit NC, video and photo shoots, Veterans Tribute Weekend, website maintenance, And of course, among other things, because Teresa and Susan are kind of all over the place. Let's see. Sorry, my notes are a little small. Currently, a recommendation was, I think, as Anthony just mentioned, to fund all of the applicants that we currently had, which included NC Pacific Arts Festival, and working with each organizer to ensure that the promotion grants will, to objectively determine what the returns on that will be, because that measurement and that's a key indicator, as we all decided that's the priority for any of these funding. The nonprofit application has yet to be determined, and that's something that, again, will be taken up on the May 26th date. And we are scheduled to meet again on May 13th to finalize the spending plan for marketing and promotions. And so that would be shared with the rest of the authority prior to the May 26th date to answer any questions or any further discussion that may be needed before it's presented in the public session. And are there any questions about any of the current applications that we have been reviewed?
And if you're interested in any particular one, they're in the binder that was left at each one of your seats.
Because we did, actually, I guess I should point out, there were some new ones, other than the Pacific Arts Festival. The One Community Pride Festival is a new event to the area. And the Trout Series, which is a Sports Commission event.
We didn't have the trout last year? We had a fishing tournament last year. It wasn't trout?
That was year one, I
Tournament,
think, yeah.
we just didn't assist with their marketing.
My fish
Other-
is all.
Oh.
Okay. All right, Chris, thank you very much. Now, okay, so,
Good. We'd like to give Teresa just a couple of minutes to provide a little bit on what they're doing, if you don't mind
please,
to.
great.
Thank you very much. I'll breeze right through these, but we wanted you to know that your advertising and marketing team is working for you, as always. Last weekend, we did a video shoot at Mike's Farm, at Yobury's Frozen Dessert, and Courtyard by Marriott. We got some great video. It was a long day, but it was very successful. Our digital campaign that we've talked about prior has launched, and it has come out of the gate gangbusters. We are planning to report some actual numbers at our next meeting. We'll do a full marketing report. International Food Trail work continues, and Veterans Tribute Weekend, we have met, a room full of us have met initially to get our thoughts and ideas formulated, and our next action steps will be, we've had some great ideas. Our next action step will be take it to the ad hoc committee, get some input there, and some primary stakeholders. So we'll report back on that. As far as events go, I just want to mention Houston should probably have his own slide, but he was recognized, as you know, he won Fabric of the Community. He was presented an award, and you know that you guys have supported him along the way. 30 years that was in the works. He's just relentless, and his work is just amazing. So well deserved for Houston. Montford Point, speaking of that, their museum reopening is this weekend, just so you know, and have that on your radar. You'll see some social posts about that, some additional information. They have a whole weekend of events planned, so I'm sure they have out-of-town guests. I don't know how many, but they have out-of-towners coming in for the weekend. Jazz in the City is coming up on May 21st. Marketing is underway for that. And the Ali Temple Charity Ball is June 24th through the 26th, and that one is underway as well. Media update, all of your staff and Susan and I attended the state conference, Visit and See conference, where we had, did a lot of networking and a lot of learning. There was some really good sessions this year. It was nice to meet in person finally, too. The media tour, FAM media tour, familiarization of Jacksonville and Onslow County tour is May 19th through the 20th. Susan is working on that itinerary, so we'll have some updates from that as well. And recent placements, you have received emails on this, I do believe, on both. In the Carolina Country magazine, Susan has pitched that one relentlessly. And they featured Mike's Farm. That is the electric co-op connection. And I don't know their numbers, but it's a number that will knock your eyes out. It's, I didn't realize that they were as big as they are. I knew the co-op was, but I didn't realize their magazine was quite that large, but it is. The Our State magazine, what featured in May, it was not even I think they have coming up the history of North Carolina is maybe June or July. They ran an article and featured Lejeune Memorial Gardens in the May issue. I don't know if you guys get that, but it was a very well-written article. Susan, just to note, has relentlessly pitched this. 2 years of work went into this, of talking to them and talking to them. That's how her world works, is she pitches and pitches until she, gets someone that bites on it. And they might bite on it, and then they don't present the story or print the story for 6 months to a year down the road. So she's hard at work on that one. Super proud of that. And in an effort to save you guys some time, so you have other things to discuss, that is your quick marketing update.
Thank you, Teresa. That's very nice. Okay. So are we going to discuss these funding applications now? That's what we got.
Yes, sir, if you
Okay,
don't
great.
mind.
No, that's great.
We're going to spend just a few minutes of your time talking about the nonprofit applications. The promotions themselves have largely been handled by the promotions committee, but given the discussions that we've had with the individual committees, it seems as though this year there might be a desire to have some crossover funding because the requests that we've received are not solely related to promotions. Some of them are related to operations, and given the law that we operate under, it appears that it would be most appropriate for some of the funding that, if we choose to award it, be funded out of the one fund versus the other. Each one of the committees had that same discussion and came to the conclusion that we should probably talk about this as a group rather than as individuals and try to come to consensus on what we would like to do. So in the effort to not necessarily simplify this, but give us a kickstart maybe, the staff has put together a recommendation, and this is simply just a recommendation, okay? But I want to give you some background as to where the recommendation comes from and kind of the logic behind it. This year, we received 2 nonprofit applications, one from the Sports Commission, the other from Sturgeon City. That's nothing new. I mean, for years, that's been the case. Sports Commission was awarded $100,000 last year, but they're requesting an increase of $120,000. And we're going to make a recommendation on how we might want to handle that request for increased funding versus a flatline 100 or, flatline budget allocation for next year. But Sturgeon City is requesting what they were awarded last year, and that's $65,000. So looking at the Sports Commission, and this kind of emphasizes the point as to why in this year we may want to split up the appropriation between the 2 revenue sources, because if you look at some of these line items right here, we have pretty straightforward operating expenses here. In addition to promotions, there's no 2 ways about that. But, when you look at professional services, when you look at dues and memberships and training and things of that nature, office space, is some of that related to promotions? Probably so, because, the same people that support the operation, the same facilities that support the operation also support our promotion efforts. But the question is, how do we go about allocating that to each particular fund in a rational and defensible manner? Well, what we've done here is Deanna and I have a lot of experience working with federal and state grants, and this is something that we have to do all the time, okay? Where you have an individual who's working on multiple projects or a facility or some type of resource that has to be paid for over multiple grant resources, right? And you have to figure out a way to charge it out appropriately because there's no direct way to quantify how much belongs here, how much belongs there. So the first step is really to come up with some rational breakdown, some appropriation of, well, generally speaking, we have, we work 50% over here and 50% over there, okay? And that's kind of what we've done with some of these that are on both sides of the fence as far as promotions as well as tourism related. So when you look at things like research and recruitment, salaries and benefits, the recommendation here has a thought process associated with it that follows that train of thought I was just talking to you about, where here we started with the fact that generally speaking, the city and the county split the costs associated with supporting the sports commission. Now, there are some other revenue sources in there, but by and large, we are the largest two contributors, relatively equal, okay? So what we did is we said, well, we would be willing to support 50% of that research and recruitment. And then in talking with Scott, said, well, how much of your time and how much of your resources do you generally put towards promotion versus operations? And he said, honestly, it's about 50-50. So what we've done here is we've taken the 50% county piece off, their support of that budget line item. And then the remaining 50%, we've split it 25-25. So what you're seeing here in line 1 is 25% of the budget request. Now, why this is different than the one that you're going to see next is because the request that they submitted was for their full operating budget, okay? And not necessarily for just the specific charges that they wanted us to reimburse for. So you see down here that $253,000 is what they put in their budget line item, but in fact, they're only asking for $120,000 of support from the TDA. Salaries and benefits followed that same thought process, but when we get to other line items, say for instance, web presence, event support, those are promotions in total. So these are the ones that we feel could be supported 100% by promotions funding. And then when we get to Jacksonville events, there are both operations as well as promotions expenses in that line item as well. But rather than using that breakdown that I talked to you about before, this is an actual budget number. So Scott gave us a budget number saying we spend 5,000 of that 69 and change on promotion. The rest is operations. So it's a lot more complicated than the way we've done this before. But the intent here was to follow a process that we're familiar with and is really easily defensible if somebody wants to call us to question as to, why did you put this money on that expense kind of thing. So here, looking at what the table says, the recommendation would be if we support them at the 100,000, okay, not the 120, we'll talk about that in a little bit. I'll talk about that more just a little bit. But at 100,000, 60,933 would come from promotions, and the delta of that would come from tourism related. Now, the reason it's that simple with tourism related is because it can be used for any tourism related expense, so you don't have to rationalize it like you do the promotion side. With that, the other part of this recommendation is that we come back at some point in the future and talk about the $20,000, okay? So Scott gave me a brief rundown of what they plan to do with that money, but I would really like for him to come and talk to you about it with a well laid out plan so that we can consider what we're getting for that additional investment. And he was very receptive to that. So if we follow the recommendation that's presented here, we would use this breakdown to a total of 100,000. Of course, that number is completely up to you. If we want to tune it back to 75, or if we want to make it 120, we can still use the same rationale to allocate it to both funds. But then, if we leave it at 100, we would come back at a later date and talk about the 20.
All right, well, I guess since the new twist is the tourism-related, we need to hear from tourism-related people, and how you feel about that. Are you comfortable with where we're going with this, or?
Well, I think it's fair. I think that's the main takeaway from this is that you want to be fair with how you allocate the money. You want to be fair to us, the tourism board, you want to be fair to the people that are asking for the money. So, in my former life, having worked with many grants, I understand exactly where you're coming from. I understand exactly how the breakdown goes. And I also understand that there's always gray areas. You can't always look at it and say, well, it's 50-50. You have to make a judgment call, and you all have done a great job of making that judgment call. And I think going forward, all of us need to keep in mind that we're always going to be making judgment calls when it comes to where to allocate the money, which side of the fence. You all have done a great job. I like the idea of having a template to follow, and you've presented us with that. Will it work from year to year? We don't know. But this is a start, and I think it's a great start, and I certainly support what you put in front of us. And I also support the 20,000, coming back and talking about the 20,000 and giving Scott a chance to come in front of us and, tell us what it's going to be used for. But I would like, I'm going to be brief, but I want to give everybody a history lesson here. I was at the table when we started the Sports Commission. It was always understood that the bulk of the money would come from the city and the county. The city and the county at that time, and when I say the city and the county, I'm talking about the county commissioners and the city council, voted to do that. And at the beginning, for however many years it was, it actually came out of their budgets. But as the tax authority came on board here, and when the county did, the monies got shifted to those boards, and it should be, to be honest with you. But it's important for all of us to remember that when this organization was formed, that I'm talking about the Sports Commission, it was always understood that the bulk of the money would have to come from the governmental agencies. Now, having said that, I think we have an opportunity in the future to incubate the Sports Commission by funding facilities that they'll actually be able to get revenue from and actually run tournaments and run events. And they will be able to start generating funds and probably be able to wean what we give them down in the future. But that's a discussion for another day, I understand. But it's always important, I think, for the history lesson, for you to know how did this start and what were the circumstances under which it started. And that's what I'm trying to convey here is it was always understood that the bulk of their money would have to come from the governmental agencies. As it so happens, and I think it's a good thing, now the funds have been shifted out of the entities' budgets onto the shoulders of the tax authority, and that's a good thing. So as we consider these, I'd like everybody to keep that in the back of their mind. So that's my pitch as an ex-member of the Sports Commission.
And, I would add to that you're absolutely right. It's a very fair and accurate way of breaking that down, considering the 1/3, 2/3 split. But to your point about moving into the future, I think it does set us up in a way to where if there's something that maybe needs to be adjusted, it's going to be much easier to pinpoint exactly where that is, looking at it as a line item. So I think there's a real advantage in that area.
Great. Ernie, Bob? Rick?
I like that, that's what we were talking about.
I think it's a good breakdown.
Mr. Chairman, if we could continue with Sturgeon City then. So, as I mentioned before, Sturgeon City took a little bit of a different approach to the way that they presented their budget. Instead of rolling out their total annual operating budget, they just included line items that total to the total amount that they're asking for, okay? So really, when we apply this similar method, or the method similarly to this example, we don't have to kind of fish through which ones we do and do not want to support, okay? But at the same time, we do have the challenge of what's promotion versus what is tourism related. Because if you look at the first line item there, part-time event custodial and support personnel salaries, I believe it's very clear that a portion of that is operation. I mean, the custodial services, I don't believe you could rationalize as any type of promotion. So we did the same thing here, and speaking with Dr. Don, his approach was, because of the new facility and because they're shifting towards, an event space where they're actually conducting this business of hosting people now, that a lot more of their costs are associated with operations. His recommendation was a 70-30, meaning a 70 in operations and a 30 in promotions, okay? And that's what we've used to come up with this recommendation. So from salaries and custodial, you'll see that 30 promotion, 70 tourism related. When you look at facility operations and contracted services, it's hard to rationalize any of that as being promotion. But when you go down to marketing and web, it's easy to rationalize that as 100% promotions. Now, the challenge here is, of course, if you look at the breakdown between promotion and tourism related, this kind of flips opposite of the direction we've been before, where a majority of these expenses have been supported by promotions. Okay, and in the last example, still a majority of that is supported by promotions. But to Mr. Hagan's point about the sports commission, the feedback that we also got from Sturgeon City is that the building is working. And they're filling it up, and they're partnering with hotels to fill it up, and they're generating revenue. And this is a sustainable business approach for them. So while they can't necessarily just drop the request for funding now, maybe it is acceptable, to taper that down over time. But Dr. Don did mention to me that if we're going to do that, it would be great if we could do it in a predictable manner, okay? Instead of saying, hey, next year you may get nothing. We all like some level of predictability, especially with, our financial planning. So if we're going to taper it down, come up with some form of plan as to how that would work out. To put these together, this is what it would look like. It's definitely not a 50-50 split, but, reasonably close. Again, it is putting more burden on tourism related, but if we choose to start tapering down on the Sturgeon City, like I've heard some of you say before, that is something that is probably only temporary, because you see the majority of those expenses from them fall into that category. And, as Mr. Davis mentioned, this isn't a one-size-fits-all. So if the applications look different next year, the methodology, the approach, the logic behind it may change too. But one of the things that we've tried to do with both this as well as the promotion applications is look at them in a more objective and systematic way. Not only with whether they're eligible for funding, but also to what extent we are recommending to fund them.
All right, looks like some good work you've done, Anthony. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Okay, appreciate that.
Certainly appreciate any feedback you have to offer. So the questions here are, one, are we comfortable with the appropriations levels? And two, are we comfortable with the breakdown promotion versus tourism related? One thing that you might ask, though, is if we do this, what is the bottom line? And here is, I think, something that's very interesting to me. If we follow this recommendation and kind of indoctrinate this as part of the spending plan, both of the funds would still have unassigned balances, okay? Where we have some flexibility in the future if we choose to do something different along the line. Now, when we're talking about the 20,000 for the sports commission, you know, if we were to encumber 100% of that promotion's money, you know, and other things, then we would have to go to the fund balance to be able to fund that. But in this case, we would have 48,000 in reserve to consider that. And one of the other things that we're going to talk to you about in the near future is possibly going after some market data so that we can start looking statistically, you know, and at a data-driven way to help make some of our marketing decisions. And then there are also events that pop up along the line. You know, we see them every year, so it gives us some flexibility in the future, but at the same time, it's still putting almost $500,000 in reserve into the fund balance at the end of the year, if, you know, for tourism related, if we choose not to spend any more of that money.
Looks good to me.
I appreciate this approach.
happy with it.
I mean,
We don't have to act on the $100,000 versus $120,000 request today, do we? Or are you asking? The Sports Commission, you know, I mentioned 100,000 in one hand and 120 in another, and we said, I think for the extra 20, we'll deal with that later. That's what you all are recommending.
Correct, yes,
And what
sir.
I'm asking is, do you want us to take some official action to vote it in, motion it in, to approve it at 100,000, or do you want to leave that alone?
Well, at this point, this is just part of your spending plan, so I don't think that we need a motion and a vote on anything.
Right now?
We'll talk
Okay.
more about this on the 26th before we go to adopt the budget. Just a consensus as to this is kind of how we want to proceed with the spending plan. And one of the things that we're going to recommend to you when we go to adopt the budget is that we anticipate some element of flexibility, or we build in some element of flexibility into the spending plan for us to adjust throughout the year as needed, assuming that we're not going over the budget on any of the line items collectively. But again, we'll talk about that. The short answer is no, I don't think you have to
No,
do
not
anything
today.
today.
Okay, that's fine. That
If you
answers my
feel good about this, this is what we'll put in the spending plan, and we'll talk about it more on the 26th.
and will an invitation be sent to Scott? Will an invitation be sent to Scott at the
Yes.
Sports Commission for?
We will
okay.
schedule him to come in. It probably won't be next meeting, but it'll be one of the subsequent meetings.
Okay.
So in fact, to Ernie's point, the 100 versus the 120, we need to wait for Scott to come and tell us.
That is the
what we need to know.
recommendation, sir.
So when we do budget, we really need to budget the 120.
Well, what I would recommend that
Or
we
else you're
do-
going to have a budget amendment, is that correct? I mean, we for instance, if we do the 100,
Mm-hmm.
and he comes and we're convinced that he needs X, it may not be 20, maybe 10, we're going to have to do a budget amendment. If we do
certainly
the
can do that.
Well,
120, and
then
he doesn't spend it,
If we do the 120, he doesn't need to
Mr.
come.
Hagan.
I mean, we
Well, no, he
want
needs to come.
we want to hear, but before,
needs to come.
before we allocate the 20, I think we need to hear what we're going to get for it. I mean, that's what we're looking for here. John?
But the
Yes,
working parameters are there.
Actually need a budget amendment. You'll just amend your spending plan and say, yes, we want to, you've got 48,000 left unassigned and 400 and,
well, I was just trying to say,
it won't actually be a formal budget amendment. You'll just direct staff to,
Well, I didn't mean to imply that we needed to do the 120. I wanted to simplify it.
yeah.
That's all my.
It's just, it
question.
won't require a budget amendment though.
So we don't need to do what I just suggested. We just need to do the 100 and then,
Mr. Hagan, Chairman, and we're trying to be very cognizant of the terms that we use. And you've heard Anthony here, and he's done a great job today. I've been really impressed. I wouldn't just say that because he's sitting beside me, but I think he's done a great job. The budget is 1/3, 2/3. End of story. That's all it is. So there's not a budget amendment or anything. Of that 1/3 and of that 2/3, you will have spending plans. And so there will always be, it's just you've done with the Pacific item tonight, you made an adjustment, a spending plan adjustment. But we're trying to keep budget as the 1/3, 2/3 when we talk about that. Spending plan is how you spend that 1/3, or how you spend that 2/3, or whether you spend it at all. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. That's much
Yes.
simpler than what I was trying to say.
Thank you.
Yes, but at the end of the day, we would like a vote, yes or no, on the $20,000 at
Oh, I
some point in the
understand.
future.
Right, right.
Yes,
At some point in time.
But that won't
Yes.
come until after Scott's had.
That's Scott has his
a chance
say.
to
right,
talk to us.
exactly.
That makes sense.
Yes, sir.
That makes sense.
Okay.
So what do you need from us today?
Concurrence, if
Just that
we're,
we're good with that?
Yeah.
if we concur, then that's good. I don't think we need a vote. Unless John feels
The
differently.
vote will be on the 26th. It's when you will actually approve this along with the other promotion requests that will be presented at that time.
But this is the final piece of the spending plan so that we can move forward with the, the public hearing and potential adoption on the 26th.
Very good.
I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
There is one last question, though, that we have related to the nonprofit applications, and we do want to get some feedback from you on ongoing funding. If that's something that we want to continue to do, or if it's something that we want to taper down on, I really just need to hear some feedback, because if we're going to start tapering down, we'd like to bring you some recommendations or talk about, how we might want to go about doing that at some point in the future.
Now, what are you exactly referring to?
So the question is, if we choose to taper down, like some of the directors have said about Sturgeon City in the past, can we get some guidance from you, or at least just some discussion to understand how we might go about doing that, if we want to go about doing that, so that we can bring back some recommendations at some point and give Dr. Don what he was asking for? It's a little bit of predictability on how that might work.
Well, that would also go for the sports commission, right?
That's up to the directors as to whether or not we want to do it for both. However, my recommendation is, until they have something like you were saying, a facility that can generate revenue and make them more self-sustainable, I really don't see how they're going to be able to wean off the sports or the TDA money at this point. Sturgeon City, on the other hand, speaking with Dr. Don, the facility is working and they're generating revenue. And if we could do this in a timed fashion, a predictable fashion, then that's something that they completely understand and appreciate.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So how do we feel about that in general?
Well, I fully support that from the standpoint that it's the same argument I made about the sports commission. If facilities are built and if they generate revenue from that, then the expectation would be that
Right.
Over time.
That revenue would
less money from
substitute.
this end.
Yeah,
The
substitute for
same
what we're
thing is
doing.
true of Sturgeon City. They've got a head start because they have a building and they are generating some revenue. Now, I would point out that the last 12 months have not been what they expected because of COVID. But going into the future, they're going to have the ability to raise money. So, yeah, and I've talked to both directors. I talked to them last week. And they both, as you indicated, they both want to know what the future looks like because they don't want to be caught short. And I've assured them that this board would look at, that was our goal as well. So,
Well, it's in the interest of being good partners,
oh, absolutely.
from my perspective, yes.
So, yeah, it makes sense that it makes sense at this point in time, Sturgeon City and the Sports Commission would be treated differently.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
another way of saying it.
I think it makes sense as well. I think, a plan of action, with obviously to consider flexibility. I think the pandemic, everybody learned a lot from the unpredictability that came along with that. A plan to start moving in a direction, maybe something presents that's not the way it can go the following year. And then ultimately, we would have to make a determination on that. But I like the idea of doing that with a plan that's, realistic,
And fair.
and fair for these entities, yeah.
So how we can proceed, if you choose, we can begin to engage with Sturgeon City, Dr. Don, and talk about options. Is that how you'd like for us to move forward?
Yeah.
Okay. This is not something that we have to decide today, but yes, sir.
I think something to keep in mind too with Sturgeon is their, their payments. The building, you said there's 11 done, you've got 9 left. So, I mean, I think that's kind of a point in time that we can focus on, that once their payments are out of the way, that should really help their situation. They don't have that, do that contribution. It'll help ours too, as a matter of fact, when those payments go away. But, that's maybe a point in time we can, between now and then, sort of. that kind of thing.
Well, we'll get with Dr. Don and their leadership and talk about options and bring something back to you. Maybe next month, it may be a subsequent meeting, but we'll definitely we'll hope to put you in a position to make a decision well before we start the budget process next year.
Okay. All right. Thanks a lot, Anthony. Real good.
Thank you, sir.
So we're at our point where we have opportunity for director's comments. And,
Well, I do.
okay.
In giving my report, I omitted a couple of things. First of all, the staff has been diligently working on the grant for the visitor center, and I kind of glossed over that. But again, I think we just need to give them kudos for what they're doing. And the other thing is, we also, I guess, need to publicly thank the county commissioners for giving $350,000 towards this project from their tax money, from their occupancy tax money. So I don't think the general public quite knows that yet. I haven't seen anything in the media about it. And so, again, those are items that concern this board, and I think we should comment on them. So I certainly want to compliment the staff for moving forward, getting the grant, and now they're doing the due diligence, and I want to thank the county for sending a lump of money over. Now, what we do with it, and whether we even do anything, is an argument for another day, I guess. Is there anything y'all want to add to the grant at this point in time? I know it's still in the works.
It's not a done deal at this point, but it is quickly moving that direction.
Where's it originating from?
Excuse me, sir?
Where's it coming from?
This is the Economic Development Administration, so it's federal money.
Oh. Good.
I think that's a great point. I think that appreciation being expressed is very, and there's so much work goes on behind the scenes. And
One of the impressive things, directors, about it is the speed in which, and I teased them, the speed in which they moved on this grant. I use the old quote from a well-known Confederate general. I generally don't quote Confederate generals. But Bedford Forrest says, "Get there, the first is with the mostest." And that was part of its philosophy. They applied or made that application, not immediately, but so quick, to be in front of others who may be applying. And I thought that was just a show of the quality that we have of our people. And I appreciate that. I just want to say thank you from all of us. And like Anthony said, it ain't over, but we got a good start. We got a good,
And we're going to bring it home,
right.
or at
So,
least try our best.
Thank y'all.
Anybody else? No? Well, I guess we're at the point
Thank you
where
for your time.
we can look forward to our next meeting on May 26, 2020. We'll have our 2 ad hoc committees, or our standing committees, meet between now and then, so we can get back together and have hopefully our budget adoption, our budget hearing, and have it done, put to bed by May 26, 2020. Nothing else to come before us. I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Bob?